He's had delusions his entire life from what his mother has told me. I've been dealing with him for 17 years, and it's been a lot. Because of the trauma that he put me through, I have a diagnosis now.
Just a little over a month ago, a strange website called Horse Laugh was posted to the Weird Websites subreddit. Upon visiting the website, you'll find an open directory containing files dating back to 2008. At first, the site seems rather mundane, with 2 of the links just leading to pages that share details of a family vacation. But this is the most normal thing you'll find on the website. Examining further, you'll find a page called ASD Index that was last modified in 2016. This page appears to show some research, and I use the word research very loosely here, of someone trying to link autism to a bacteria called H. pylori. Most of what's written here is completely absurd and false, but we'll get to that in a moment. At this point, I'm sure most can agree that what we've seen here is weird, but still not anything too noteworthy. What really makes the website bizarre is the directory last modified in 2023 called 1417BR Orbs. This directory contains 8 videos, each labeled with a number. What you're seeing is exactly what appears in all 8 videos. It is someone sleeping in a small, empty room like this, with a timestamp in the bottom right corner of the screen. In some parts of these videos, you can see someone open the door and peek in momentarily before walking away. Later, the lights outside the room turn off, and then the door shuts. We get absolutely no context for what's going on here, and as you can understand, this has freaked out a lot of people. But that isn't even the weirdest part. The strangest part is that just days after this website was brought to people's attention, everything on the website was removed, as if someone didn't want people to find this. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest here, when I first started looking into this, I really thought I was gonna find some sort of reasonable, mundane explanation for this, but what I found was the exact opposite of that. Shortly after this was posted to Reddit, it didn't take long for people to do some searching into the web registrar to see who owned the website. The site was registered to a man named Dan Judd. Some light digging will bring up a few emails belonging to him, but I initially had no luck getting through to him on any of these. Now, I was really determined to get a hold of someone who could help me get some answers here, so I dived pretty deep on this one. I'm not trying to dox anyone, so without getting too deep into how I got the information, I can confidently say that I found contact information from his entire family. I basically just shot out emails to everyone hoping for a reply, until on December 21st, I received an email back from Dan's stepson, Alan. Now, I want to quickly interject here that Alan does not actually like being referred to as Dan's son because he wants to be separated from Dan. So sorry for referencing you that way, Alan. I just need some way for the audience to understand your relation to him here. He gave me a phone number to get in touch with Dan, and by the looks of the email, it seemed reasonable to assume that Dan was expecting me to call, right? I did a background search on the number and confirmed that it does indeed belong to Dan. Weirdly enough, when I called him, he seemed really pissed off. I wanted to record the phone call, but the thing is I live in a 2-party consent state, so I didn't want to actually record it unless I had his permission. The entire conversation we had was him just screaming at me, refusing to give me any information about the site or the videos on it unless I told him who I was. And the thing is, I did tell him who I was, multiple times actually, but he just kept getting angrier and angrier until he eventually hung up on me. Only minutes after our phone call ended, he sent me an email saying he wasn't interested in speaking with me further. However, the most eerie part of the email was the final line. He wrote, "If you've gotten this far, you might believe that there is much, much more to the story. There is. I suppose someone should probably know the whole story sooner or later, although they will almost certainly regret it once they've gotten it in its entirety. As they say, some things one cannot unlearn." Creepy, right? Obviously, I wasn't just gonna leave it at this, so I set up a phone call with Alan to talk more about this, and Alan was able to shed a lot of light on the situation. Fortunately, Alan did give me permission to record our phone call. Okay, so you're Dan's son, right?
Yes, he married my mother, but he had no legal rights over me growing up, so.
Okay, I see. So, how long have you known about the Horse Laugh website?
Honestly, I found out about it through you contacting me. Um, it's it's really shady, actually. Now that I think about it, but I've known about his delusions for years.
The first thing I asked him about were the videos on the ASD index page. I only mentioned this briefly before, so let's take a quick deep dive into what this page is actually trying to say. The page uses a bunch of pseudoscience to try and link a bacteria called H. pylori to autism. His argument essentially goes like this. H. pylori causes stomach issues like chronic gastritis and stomach ulcers. Adults who suffer from stomach ulcers test positive for wheat and corn allergies. Most autistic children display frequent symptoms of stomach pain, and most autistic children are allergic to wheat and corn. The dominant protein in H. pylori is structurally similar to that in wheat and corn and blastocystis, a parasitic organism that can cause stomach issues. Autistic children experience lessening of symptoms when treated with antibiotics. Therefore, H. pylori must be linked to autism. Okay, now first of all, even if all these statements were true, the conclusion still would not follow. But the main problem here is that most of these statements are just completely false. Literally, the only statements here that are true is that H. pylori is responsible for stomach ulcers, and children with autism do often experience symptoms of stomach issues. Everything else is completely false. Now, given that the Autism Index page was posted years before the Orbs videos were, I initially didn't think these two things were related at all, but that seems to not be the case. The videos in the 1417 BR Orbs folder are definitely raw footage taken directly from Dan Judd. We can confirm this by looking at the metadata from the videos, which shows that the creation and modification times match up with the timestamps in the videos. The metadata also tells us that Dan did not edit the videos to trim them down into 1-minute segments. The camera that was recording this was set up to automatically only record in 1-minute segments, then export that video and start a new 1-minute recording. So, who is the person in the video, and why is it being recorded? This is what Alan told me.
That's my half sister. That is her bedroom. Now, the reason why there's nothing in her room in that is because, like I said, she has a mindset of a toddler. She can be a danger to herself. She has seizures, so that's why they have the camera in there. But why he had posted the videos online, completely messed up. The autism delusion, he shouldn't have put that online. He claims that H. pylori caused her autism. He also won't treat her for the autism. I mean, he won't accept treatment. He just wants to continue to believe that she is going to snap out of it one day and start talking.
I'm kind of curious about like the way that he named the folder with the videos. So, what about orbs?
I don't know what orbs means, but orbs typically, I believe it has to do with spiritual lights that pass over cameras and stuff like that. I know that he has some really, really spiritual beliefs about the other side and purgatory and stuff like that. So
maybe
honestly,
he feels like that ties into the whole autism thing somehow. I don't know.
Yeah.
So how long has he had these kinds of delusions? Like, I assume it wasn't specific to this, was it?
He's had delusions his entire life. To him, if he says it, it's true.
Has he been diagnosed with anything?
No, not that I know of. Because of the trauma that he put me through, I have a diagnosis now.
What kind of trauma has he put you through, if you're okay with sharing?
Growing up, I was, tossed around. He would throw me out the door. He would drag me around the house by my shirt. He threatened to punch me a few times. He never actually did that, but he did slap me repeatedly to the point of bloody noses and everything like that. He's been a black eye once.
Well, I guess the most important thing right now then is your half sister, the one in those videos. Is she like safe at the moment? I mean, I assume it's not just your dad that's watching over her, right?
My sister is the main one that watches over her. My other sister, Audrey, she's the main one she's the one who knows how to handle her and keep her calm. And
Dan's delusions don't seem to be exclusive to just this autism-related stuff. As a user on Reddit pointed out, Doing more research into the registrar of horselaugh.com will yield results for other domains that Dan owns. And there's quite a lot. Of these domains, a few of them are focused on religious content. The earliest one I found was a domain called God Before Us from 2001 that seemed to just be a landing page for a Bible study group. Another interesting domain that Dan owns is oklds.com, which stands for Oklahoma Latter-day Saints. The website is currently down, but archives show that it used to be an open directory that listed links to a bunch of other pages. These include God Before Us, LDS, and Horselaugh. A 2015 archive of the site shows the ASD index page that we discussed before, but what we're going to be focused on here is the 2016 archive, which shows two directories. One is called Autism Notes, and the other is called 116 Pages. Trying to access an archive of either one of these directories just leads to an authorization required page, so we don't know exactly what type of content resided in these directories. But the name 116 Pages is enough to lead us down another bizarre rabbit hole that Dan got himself involved in. At one point, Dan became very involved with the Mormon Church. He was active on several online Mormon forums. According to a 2019 post he made on mormondialogue.org, he says he became a Mormon in 2013 after his stepson was invited to the church by a girl from his school.
I've been trying to correct him on that for years. What happened is I had a crush on a girl, and I wanted to impress her by showing interest in her interest. And I knew she was LDS, and I said, "Can I invite my family to your church?" And she was like, "Yes." So it was kind of like a co-inviting. I invited ourselves, but
okay.
Um,
Your dad also wrote on that forum post that prior to this, he wasn't religious at all. Is that true? Because I found some religious stuff he wrote that dates like way before he became a Mormon.
He would go jump around from church to church to church. I don't know too much about what he believed. He believed in God. He was all over the place. I mean, we went to church for a couple weeks, and then he would be fed up with it. He'd go to another church, and it was continuous.
Oh, okay.
There was even a short period of time we didn't go to the LDS church because my half sister, she was put in child protective custody, specifically because of a lie that they had done something to her that they didn't do. Now, don't get me wrong. He is an abusive father, but what they claimed he did, that he didn't do. Eventually, the school that she was going to released documents to the DA, and the DA was like, "Okay, I'm giving this to the lawyer," because it was the evidence she needed to know that they were innocent in that particular claim. But doesn't mean he's completely innocent.
This newfound belief system of Dan's took a very strong hold of him. So much that he would spend the following years claiming he possessed divine knowledge that he refused to share. For what I'm about to tell you to make sense, I'm going to have to give you a very brief background on some of the beliefs of Mormonism. The Book of Mormon was created by a man named Joseph Smith in the early 1800s. The claim is that Joseph Smith was given golden plates by an angel that had ancient records inscribed on them. Using divine knowledge, Smith transcribed these writings on these golden plates into the Book of Mormon, and then the angel took the golden plates away. A core part of Mormonism is that the first 116 pages of these transcriptions were lost in 1828. These pages are known as the Book of Lehi and are missing to this day. Dan Judd has been claiming for years that he actually has these 116 pages and that they've been verified by an authority of the church. Of course, he refuses to actually share the content of these pages. His reasoning is that if he's wrong about the authenticity of the pages, he doesn't want to spread false doctrines. And if he's right, he doesn't want opportunists to publish their own version of the Book of Lehi. So, for all these years, he's kept this in secrecy. Many members of the forums that Dan posts in are skeptical of his claims, as they should be.
The 116 pages, he's been talking about that ever since he read Doctrine and Covenants, which is one of the LDS talks about the missing pages.
Dan's connections to the Mormon Church don't stop here though. Mentions of Dan in relation to the Mormon Church have appeared in many places online throughout the years, and disturbingly enough, there's been a connection made between Dan Judd and the Vallow Daybell Doomsday Murders. The Vallow Daybell Doomsday Murders involved two members of the Mormon community, Lori Vallow and her husband, Chad Daybell. The couple believed in extreme doomsday theories, claiming that some people were possessed by dark spirits and needed to be eliminated. In 2019, both of Lori's children went missing, resulting in a nationwide search. Soon afterward, the remains were found buried on Chad Daybell's property. It was the doomsday beliefs of Vallow and Daybell that justified this tragedy. In a Reddit post from 2020, it is mentioned that Dan Judd recounts meeting Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow at a camp in Utah in 2017. In his encounter with them, he brought up that he had the lost 116 pages. Judd describes that Chad tried to pressure him into sharing these pages because Chad wanted to write a book based on the lost pages to further his agenda. Dan Judd eventually cut ties with them because he felt they were disingenuous with the agenda they were promoting. Now, I want to make it clear, I'm not at all actually trying to imply that Dan Judd had anything to do with the Vallow Daybell Doomsday Murders, but I do just think that it's strange that the connection exists at all, in addition to all the other bizarre stuff that we know about him.
So the murders happened back in 2019. He kicked me out whenever I was 18, which would have been back in 2016, 2015. So I don't know too much about that. I do know this. I remember hearing Chad Daybell's name come out of his mouth at one point. I know that he has specifically tried to distance himself from those murders and everything. I also know that it is right up his alley. I do not have any evidence of any kind claim or support the fact that he actually had anything to do with it. So
I see. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't think that he had anything to do with it. At least, like you said, I have no reason to believe that. I mean, if anything, like, they were well known in the Mormon community anyway, so it might have just been coincidence that, you know, he had an encounter with them like plenty of other people did.
Yeah.
From everything we know so far, it would appear that Dan Judd is a mentally unstable individual who has clearly been struggling with delusions for years now. The fact that he's allowing these delusions to affect the way he interacts with the girl in the Orbs videos, as well as posting those online, is extremely concerning. It's comforting to know that he isn't the primary caretaker of her, but based on what he has done already, it's fair to say that he's a very unpredictable individual. Dan, if you happen to be watching this, I seriously hope you get some help. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the flip side.